Robin,
Doug?
promoting your podcast on social media doesn't work.
Is that so?
That's so.
Okay, I quit.
So let me give you the theory, okay?
Okay,
And
hit me.
millions of years of experience with this. People are scrolling on
Yep,
social media, scrolling 2.5 hours a day, scrolling.
yep.
You're not going to stop them from scrolling to listen to your 30-minute, 40-minute podcast episode. It can't be done.
You know, you're right, but
But,
you're also wrong.
okay.
Uh, yeah, so people are scrolling, absolutely. The question is, what are they looking at when they're scrolling? Okay. They tend to now if we make the assumption that we're not, sort of old fuddy-duddies on Facebook or something looking at old pictures, but the new stuff, the TikTok, the Instagram Reels, things like that, the little videos, the short form videos that people are consuming en masse, several per minute, as you say, for 2.5 hour stretches as a day, and guilty.
Mm.
What are they looking at? They're looking at short, little engaging bites of information.
Dopamine hits.
What's that?
Dopamine hits, right? I'm just
Dopamine
feeding
hits.
chemicals to my brain.
That's exactly right. And it's you end up in this dopamine spiral. Now, I don't want to get into the whole philosophical debate of whether that's good or bad. We're just going to talk about the fact that it's a reality, and is there a way to leverage this for your podcast? Um, People are digesting these little bits. Well, I tell you something, Doug, when I am on TikTok and I am scrolling and doom scrolling or whatever you want to call it, oftentimes what I see are engaging little clips of podcasts. I will see little snippets of Joe Rogan. I will see little snippets of Call Her Daddy. Now, these podcasts are absolutely monumental. They're huge. They're the
Huge.
biggest in the world.
Yeah.
Arguably, they don't need to do any advertising. They've got such great word of mouth, and a really huge subscriber base already. But that is a form of marketing for them. They are not trying to interfere with the scroll. They are trying to become part of it. So if you have a podcast and you take a 5, 10, 15-second little snippet that is quite interesting, quite engaging, and quite favorable for these little mini dopamine hits, and you put that into TikTok, Instagram, and Instagram Reels, that can be very engaging. You become part of the scroll. And at that point, yeah, maybe they're not going to click to your profile, click to your website, then click to your podcast, on Spotify, and then spend 30 minutes listening to your latest episode at that time because they're in that mindset of scrolling. But they might follow you. They might end up clicking the link. You have these little micro engagements that get them 1 or 2 steps closer to listening to your podcast. And as with all sort of marketing and advertising, it is a numbers game. If you run 1,000 ads, 950 of them are going to be completely ignored. But you
Hmm.
focus on those 50, and 50 of those people will take that first step. A handful of them may take the second step.
Hmm.
You do that often enough, and you build subscribers, and you end up with people listening to that 30-minute podcast.
Okay. I think a lot of podcast people would agree with what you said. Take the assets that you've got, carve them into bite-sized chunks, whether that's 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 seconds, whatever you decide, and it works at the awareness level of the funnel. But I want to drill deeper. This whole idea of being able to stop the scroll. You and I have run ad campaigns where that's exactly what we're trying to do. We
Yeah.
want them to click and go even do a couple other clicks on our client's website. This whole idea that you can't stop the scroll, you can. And
You
it's because of
can.
the algorithms, right?
You can stop the scroll. And I mean, admittedly, again, it's a numbers game. If you're trying to reach 1,000 people, you're not going to get 1,000 people to stop to scroll
Amen.
when they're in the midst of their TikTok frenzy. But you'll get a handful of them to accomplish what you want them to do. And like I said before, you may take them part of the way so that after they're done their doom scroll session, they will come back to it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's just that it's little steps, little micro engagements, right? And it's the same. It's honestly, it's the same if you're running ads on Google search or you're running them, more, I'll call them traditional meta ads or something like that. You're not always going to get people to do the thing right away. It takes time. It takes repetition. I think there are old statistics out there, sort of David Ogilvy era statistics that say someone's got to be subjected to an ad 20 times
Right.
before you end up having an impact. The good news about putting this stuff inside of TikTok and Instagram Reels is that it's a lot easier to get those 20 exposures, right? As opposed to putting a billboard and you got to wait at least 20 business days or something like that.
How well do Google and Meta know when I'm in the mood, so to speak?
Um,
Let me talk. So their
Please.
algorithm, if I've been talking to you about mugs, they know I'm in the mood, at least for the next 30 seconds, about mugs. Does that change the algorithm?
There's an element of that. I don't want to
And
stir
my
up too
phone
much.
is listening to me, but I'm not going to get started
Well, I
here.
was going to say, I don't want to stir up too much controversy. I too believe the phone is listening,
Hmm.
but the official stance of the Googles and Metas of the world is no, the phones are not listening.
Yeah.
But
They
okay,
heard us complaining about it. That's why they said it. But
yeah,
anyway,
I mean,
yeah.
anecdotally, I think a lot of people would say that's BS. I think
Yeah.
my phone is listening. I'm quite certain of it. But yeah, whether you're talking about mugs with me or you're sending emails and you're talking about, hey, I saw this great mug, and it was, yeah, they're listening all the
All
time.
the
I mean, they may
time.
not be actually literally listening on your phone, but they're reading everything you do. They're watching everything you do online, and so there is an element of where the different platforms will start putting you in different buckets. First off, when you create an account with Google, with Meta, things like that, you log in. Then you open up another browser tab, or you come back the next day and you start browsing around. Guess what? In the background, you're still logged in. They follow everything about you, right? They know what you're doing as you're visiting these other websites. They've got relationships with the websites that they're sharing data. They're sharing data with the Googles and Metas of the world. And so you're sending emails to me. Google's reading your Gmail, right? You browse a website, and it's got mugs for sale amongst other things, and Google can see that data. You add something to your cart. Ooh, now you're a hot prospect. So there's all kinds of different buckets that the platforms will put you in, such that then when you go on TikTok and you start doom scrolling, all of a sudden one that you come across is this really cool mug that you're
Yeah.
talking about, right?
Yeah.
And it's just this little 5 second clip, and maybe it's something intended to go viral. It's someone doing a dance and then showing the mug and smashing it over their head or something. I don't know, but that's the way this stuff works, right? And that is the targeting nature of it. So, and I'm not sure if this was going to be sort of the next lead in here, was to talk more about the targeting of the ads. But when someone is scrolling and they're looking at, cat videos or whatever it is they want to look at, because they already belong to all these different buckets, already in all these different buckets. They are a middle-aged man, and they like mugs, and they are really into podcasting and things like that. They're being targeted. So the advertiser saying, I want to reach people who are middle-aged and are interested in mugs, boom, there's that ad that shows up. So you're doing something else ostensibly, but you see an ad that is highly targeted. You get that feeling of, how did they read my mind? And they're not reading your mind. They're just reading the data. There's trillions of points of data that these companies have, and they know all kinds of things about you. And it works because you show these ads to enough of the people that are in the mug bucket, as it were, and you sell more mugs. So it works. It's a positive reinforcement loop.
So last question, an ad for your podcast or for an episode of your podcast that is maybe even more specific
Even better.
will be effective to some degree. That's seems to be without argument. Then it becomes, is it better to put my money there or put my money into advertising in a podcast app where I have nothing but podcast listeners, and the ratio is about 1 in 3 people have a fairly regular podcasting habit.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the debate here, is to compare numbers. Do I trust these hypersensitive and targeted algorithms by Google and Meta, or do I put money into banner ads in the podcast apps that where I could target a kind of audience but not nearly as specific?
Oh, great question. And for me, I think the answer, whenever you say, should I do this or this or this or this,
Do both.
as long as we're not talking about, actual billboards out there, I will say the answer is yes, you should do those things. You should test it. I'm a data guy. I'm a numbers guy.
That's science.
So,
Yeah.
my recommendation, whenever I'm talking to a, new client, a new campaign, they want to accomplish certain goals. We say, okay, we need to understand who your target audience is, what they're doing, what you want them to do, competitors, all that kind of stuff. But if you want to, if you end up deciding we want to reach people of a certain age, of a certain affluence, with certain interests, one of which includes podcasting, today's advertising giants are custom built for this. This is exactly what they do. You go into the platforms, you tick boxes that say, this is who I want to reach. And they say, okay, gotcha. That list is approximately 112 million people large. Does that work for you? And then, you start running those ads in TikTok, and you run them in Instagram. You run them on the Reels, and you put some ads inside of the podcast itself. With proper tracking, obviously, you'll be able to see what is working and what is not. I might make the assumption, hey, I think TikTok's going to be great because you're trying to reach a younger audience. Your podcast is all about smashing mugs on people's heads, and that's great. And people love that, especially the younger kids. They'll say, TikTok is where you got to be.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you run that on TikTok, on Instagram, and within the podcast itself, and it's traditional Facebook that's the winner. Starts driving, okay, I'm not, there's no sacred cows in this world. You find what works, you let the data guide you. But I mean, the answer is you got to test this stuff. You can't make the assumption, oh, TikTok will never work for me, or I don't want to do Facebook because I don't like Facebook. Good for you. Maybe your customers love it. Maybe they hate it and they spite scroll. They're on Facebook just saying, this is so dumb. I hate this. Look at all these losers. And then they see an ad and go, ooh, look at this really cool mug.
It explains why Howard Stern has so many listeners.
That's it. People hate listen.
Hate that guy. Yeah. Thanks for this, Robin. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Would love it if you would subscribe to this channel. If you want to check out what Robin does, just go to the notes below and click on Wulver.